My sister-in-law told her son to untie my swimsuit top at my daughter's birthday, then laughed while I clutched my chest and said, "You obviously can't take a joke." When I confronted her, she rolled her eyes and sneered, "You need to lighten up." Fast forward to now she's mad because I ruined her life. I think she needs to lighten up. I'm probably one of the only women I know that can genuinely say that I love my Mel. She was welcoming towards me from the beginning, and even helped me plan my wedding with her son. She is the type of woman to approach you at a family gathering when she sees you're alone, or to include you in a conversation at the dinner table when you have no idea what everyone's talking about. There's even been times where me, her, and my husband hang out and we start bickering, and she'll take my side. But unfortunately, my brother-in-law and sister-in-law are the complete opposite. For context, they're racist. You see, I'm Irish while they're all British, which doesn't even make sense because weren't they the ones to colonize US? But anyway, my husband never rubbed it in or even mentioned it, so I assumed they would be the same. But I was wrong. The first time I met his brother and sister, we were going out for lunch and I said, "Oh, I'm so hungry." Then the brother immediately chimed in and said, "You know, I thought you would have been used to hunger by now." I didn't know what he meant, but then the sister said, "Yeah, like didn't the famine prepare you for this moment?" They then proceeded to laugh snort like it was the funniest thing humanity has ever heard. I honestly wanted to shout back about how they're the greediest nation, how they're an effing joke. But I bit my tongue because I figured if they were related to my husband, then they were probably good people. Unfortunately, I was wrong. When we sat down for dinner, they continued to make jokes about how I shouldn't waste time eating because I need to go win back the 6 counties England took from us. It even got to the point where my husband told them to shut the F up. And my mother-in-law is too nice to say anything, but she completely ignored them for the rest of the day. My husband spent the entire car ride home apologizing on their behalf. He told me that they had always been the type to gang up on people and bully them, but he genuinely thought that they had changed. After that, my husband promised that we would go low contact with them, and my mother-in-law promised to warn us if they'd be at any event in future. That's when I knew I had chosen the right man to marry. Before I continue, you should probably know that I was born and raised in the foster system, meaning my husband's family was all I had. Okay, now back to the story. Fast forward to a year later when our baby girl was born. I had no choice but to have my sister-in-law and brother-in-law in the birthing room, alongside my mother-in-law and husband. When labor started, my mother-in-law practically shoved them out of the room, and so my mother-in-law and husband were the one holding my hands when baby Isabella was born. She was so beautiful, and my mother-in-law practically became a live-in babysitter while we raised her. But one day, I couldn't call off work and my mother-in-law was sick. So in a moment of panic, I called my SEL. Even though I hated her, she had a kid of her own. So I figured that she would be prepared to take care of my baby well. She agreed, and I came home from work that day to a fully cleaned house with freshly cooked dinner on the table and a smiling Isabella. From there, our relationship began to be rebuilt. Because if you can make my baby girl happy, then you automatically gain 20 positive points in my books. By that point, Isabella was 5, while my SIL's son was 7, and my BIL's was 6. So they frequently hung out for playdates and sleepovers at our house, mainly because I always wanted my child to have the big family I never had. Honestly, seeing them laugh and be dumb together made my heart so full with love. And by the end of the day, Isabella was always happier than when the day started. So for her 6th birthday party, I invited them plus some of her elementary school friends. It was at the local water park, which was ideal. Kiddie pools, smaller slides, dozens of lifeguards. I thought my biggest issue would be making sure that they didn't run and fall on the poolside surface, but I was wrong. It happened when we were in the pool. I was working with my daughter on swimming, laughing as she tried to splash water on my face when I felt it. A tug of my strings of my top untying it. At this exact moment, Isabella began to swim away, and my instinct kicked in, and I extended my arms to bring her back. Next thing I knew, I had accidentally flashed the entire pool with my chest, full cherries out. I screamed and turned around, accidentally hitting the son of my SEL. This all happened in the span of 5 seconds. He screamed and all heads turned our way, and so I took him and Isabella out of the pool. Daniel, Seal's son's name. What happened? I'm sorry mommy told me to do it. She didn't tell me you'd get mad. Anger boiled my blood. Next thing I knew, people were coming up to me and telling me I should be ashamed of laying hands on a child, that I deserved to rot. Suddenly, my Bill's son ran up to where we were standing and pushed over Isabella. Now I was livid. Dylan appeared out of nowhere, having heard the commotion from the snack bar. He took one look at Isabella crying, me clutching my top, and the crowd forming around us, and immediately knew something was wrong. I quickly told him what happened as he helped me get a towel wrapped around me. "Where's Emma?" he demanded, his face turning red with anger. I spotted her standing off to the side with Thomas, both of them smirking at my humiliation and my daughter's pain. Dylan marched over to them while I comforted Isabella. "What the hell is wrong with you two?" I heard him yell. "You got a 6-year-old to untie my wife's swimsuit? And you," he turned to Thomas, "told your kid to push Isabella on her birthday?" Emma rolled her eyes. "It was just a joke, Dylan. Lighten up. Your wife obviously can't take a joke, just like she can't control her temper around children." By this point, several parents were watching the scene unfold. Some looked confused, others judgmental. I felt like I was going to throw up from the humiliation. Martha had been in the bathroom during the incident, but she came rushing over when she saw the commotion. "What's happening?" she asked, immediately kneeling down to check on Isabella's knee. "Your children are what's happening," Dylan snapped. "They got Nathan to untie Siobhan's top and then Ethan pushed Isabella." Martha's face fell. She looked at Emma and Thomas with an expression I'd never seen before. Not just disappointment, but genuine shock. "Is this true?" she asked them. "We were just having a bit of fun," Thomas shrugged. "The Irish girl needs to lighten up." I couldn't believe they were still going with the Irish jokes, even after what they'd done. Dylan grabbed Isabella's birthday cake from the party area and told everyone the party was over. He apologized to the other parents and kids while I took Isabella to the changing room to get dressed. The ride home was tense. Isabella had stopped crying but was unusually quiet. Martha sat in the back with her, trying to cheer her up by talking about the presents she still had to open at home. Dylan gripped the steering wheel so tight his knuckles were white. "I'm so sorry," he kept saying. "I should have known they'd pull something. I just didn't think they'd stoop this low or involve the kids." "It's not your fault," I told him, though I was still shaking with anger and embarrassment. "But this is it. I'm done trying with them. They're not welcome in our home or around Isabella anymore." Dylan nodded grimly. "I agree. This was the last straw." When we got home, we tried to salvage what was left of Isabella's birthday. We opened presents, had cake, and watched her favorite movie. She seemed to bounce back pretty quickly, the way kids do, but I couldn't shake the sick feeling in my stomach. After Isabella went to bed, Dylan, Martha, and I sat at the kitchen table. Martha looked exhausted and ashamed. "I don't know what's wrong with them," she said quietly. "I didn't raise them to be like this." "It's not your fault," I assured her, reaching for her hand. "Some people just choose to be cruel." "I'm going to talk to them," Martha said firmly. "This behavior is unacceptable." Dylan shook his head. "Talking won't help, Mom. We've tried that. They're not going to change." "So what are you saying?" Martha asked, her voice breaking slightly. "I'm saying we've cut them off, and we're sticking to the decision," Dylan replied. "No more family gatherings if they're there. No more chances. This has shown me that our choice was more than correct the first time." Martha looked torn, and I understood why. They were still her children, no matter how awful they were. But Isabella was her granddaughter, and she'd been hurt too. "I understand," she finally said. "I'll I'll make sure to let you know if they'll be at any family events. That night, after Martha went home, Dylan and I lay in bed, both too wired to sleep. I'm sorry your family turned out to be such a nightmare, I said. Dylan pulled me close. You and Isabella are my family, my real family, and I'll always choose you. I believed him, but something told me this wasn't over. The look in Emma's eyes when we left the water park wasn't just smugness, it was hatred, and I had a feeling things were about to get much worse. I was right about things getting worse. The next morning, I woke up to 17 missed calls from Emma and a string of texts calling me an overreacting bitch who can't take a joke. I showed Dylan, who just shook his head and blocked her number from my phone. He did the same with Thomas's number too. I felt a weight lift off my shoulders, knowing I wouldn't have to deal with their bullcrap directly anymore. The morning light filtered through our bedroom curtains as I deleted the notifications, each disappearing message feeling like a small victory. But that relief didn't last long. 3 days after the water park disaster, I was getting Isabella ready for school when the doorbell rang. The sharp, insistent sound made me freeze. Something in my gut told me this wasn't going to be good. I opened it to find Emma standing there with Nathan, both wearing these fake A's smiles that made my skin crawl. Emma's hair was perfectly styled, her makeup flawless. The picture of suburban motherhood that I knew was just a facade. We came to apologize, Emma announced, pushing past me into the house before I could stop her. Nathan trailed behind, looking at the floor, his small shoulders hunched with discomfort. Dylan was already at work, so it was just me facing them. I crossed my arms and stayed by the door, keeping it wide open as a not-so-subtle hint. The cool morning air drifted in, raising goosebumps on my arms. Isabella's getting ready for school. We don't have time for this, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. Emma ignored me completely, walking around our living room like she was inspecting it. Her manicured fingers trailed over our family photos, lingering on one of Dylan and me on our wedding day. Nathan has something he wants to say to Isabella, don't you, sweetie? Before I could protest, Isabella came bouncing down the stairs in her school uniform, her backpack clutched in her small hands. She stopped dead when she saw Emma and Nathan, her smile disappearing instantly. The way her body tensed broke my heart. Isabella, honey, Nathan wants to say sorry for what happened at your party, Emma said in the sickly sweet voice that dripped with insincerity. Nathan mumbled something that sounded vaguely like sorry, while Emma beamed like she'd just solved world peace. Isabella just nodded awkwardly, her eyes darting to me for guidance. Great, now that's settled. I thought maybe we could have a playdate this weekend? Put all this nastiness behind us? Emma suggested, her voice lilting with false cheer. I almost laughed. The audacity was breathtaking. That's not happening, Emma. Isabella needs to get to school and you need to leave. I moved toward Isabella, placing a protective hand on her shoulder. Emma's fake smile dropped like a stone. Her eyes narrowed, and for a moment I glimpsed the real person beneath the polished exterior. You know, Siobhan, you're making a big mistake turning family against each other. Dylan might be blinded by whatever spell you've cast on him, but the rest of us see right through you. I grabbed Isabella's backpack and ushered her toward the door, my heart pounding. We're going to be late. Please lock the door when you leave. The morning sun felt too bright as we stepped outside, highlighting every detail of this uncomfortable moment. As I walked Isabella to the car, I heard Emma call out, "This isn't over, you know." Her voice carried across our quiet suburban street, making me wince. I drove to school with shaking hands, the steering wheel slick beneath my grip, then immediately called Dylan. He was furious and called Martha, who promised to talk to Emma again. But I had this sinking feeling that talking wasn't going to fix anything. This was just the beginning. I was right. Over the next few weeks, weird shit started happening. First, I noticed things in our house being slightly moved around. Nothing major, just enough to make me question my sanity. Like Isabella's favorite stuffed rabbit would be on a different shelf, or the family photos on our mantle would be rearranged. Small, unsettling changes that left me standing in rooms, second-guessing my memory. Then I started finding footprints in the garden under Isabella's bedroom window, distinct shoe prints pressed into the soft earth. Dylan thought it might be neighborhood kids cutting through our yard, but I wasn't convinced. The pattern was too regular, too deliberate. I started double-checking all our locks before bed, testing each window latch twice, the ritual bringing small comfort in the growing unease. The real kicker came about a month after the water park incident. I went to check the mail on a crisp autumn morning and found Isabella's favorite teddy bear, the one Martha had given her when she was born, stuffed inside our mailbox. It had been sliced open, the stuffing pulled out and scattered like snow across the bills and flyers. My hands trembled as I gathered the remains. I didn't tell Isabella. I told Dylan, who looked sick but still suggested it might be random vandalism. Random vandalism that specifically targeted our daughter's favorite toy? I asked, holding up the mutilated bear. Come on, Dylan, he sighed, running his hand through his hair. I know. I don't want to believe they'd go this far. I started keeping a journal of all the weird incidents, documenting dates, times, and details in a leather-bound notebook I kept hidden in my nightstand. Dylan thought I was being paranoid, but I needed to document everything, just in case. The growing collection of entries made a disturbing pattern even clearer. Then one Tuesday afternoon, Isabella came home from school acting strange. She was quiet during dinner, pushing her food around her plate instead of chattering away like usual. The scrape of her fork against the ceramic was the loudest sound in our kitchen. After Dylan went to take a shower, I sat next to her on the couch, the cushions dipping as I pulled her close. Hey, sweetie, is everything okay? Did something happen at school today? I asked, brushing her hair back from her forehead. She looked down at her hands, small fingers twisting together. Aunt Emma came to school today. My blood ran cold, a chill spreading through my body. What do you mean she came to school? She was at the office when we were coming in from recess. She told the lady at the desk she wanted to take me for lunch, but the lady said no because Aunt Emma wasn't on the list. Isabella looked up at me with worried eyes, wide and uncertain. Was I supposed to go with her? I pulled her into a hug, trying to hide how freaked out I was, my heart hammering against my ribs. No, baby. You're never supposed to go with anyone unless Daddy or I tell you it's okay, even if it's family. When Dylan got out of the shower, water still clinging to his hair, I told him what happened. He went white, then red with anger. He immediately called the school and confirmed that yes, Emma had shown up claiming she was there to take Isabella out for a special lunch. Thankfully, the school followed protocol and refused since she wasn't on our approved pickup list. That's it, Dylan said after hanging up, his voice tight with controlled fury. We're getting a restraining order. We filed a police report the next day, but without any concrete evidence of threats, they couldn't do much. The officer, a middle-aged woman with sympathetic eyes, suggested we install security cameras and keep documenting everything. So that weekend, Dylan installed cameras covering our front door, backyard, and driveway. The small black devices became our silent guardians. I also had a talk with Isabella's school. They added a note to her file that under no circumstances was she to leave with anyone other than Dylan or me, not even Martha, unless we called ahead. The principal's grave nod as he made the note was both reassuring and terrifying. For a few weeks, things were quiet. The cameras didn't catch anything suspicious, and there were no more incidents at school. I started to think maybe Emma and Thomas had finally gotten the message. The constant tension in my shoulders began to ease, just slightly. Then Martha called to invite us to her house for Sunday lunch. Her warm voice was a balm after weeks of stress. "It'll just be us," she promised. "I've told Emma and Thomas they're not welcome if they can't behave civilly." It felt good to have a normal family gathering again. Martha made her famous roast beef, the rich aroma filling her cozy kitchen, and Isabella helped her bake cookies for dessert, giggling as she measured flour with clumsy hands. For a few hours, I almost forgot about all the drama. As we were helping Martha clean up, dishes clinking softly as we worked, she hesitantly brought up Emma and Thomas. "They're saying you won't let them see Isabella anymore, that you're turning Dylan against his own family." Her hands stilled on a plate, her eyes sad. Dylan snorted. "They did that all on their own, Mom." Martha nodded sadly. "I know, they're still my children. I keep hoping they'll grow up eventually." I squeezed her hand, feeling the softness of her skin. "We don't want to put you in the middle, Martha. We know this is hard for you." She smiled gratefully, but I could see the strain in her eyes. This situation was tearing her apart, and I hated Emma and Thomas even more for doing this to their own mother. The next morning, I went out to start my car for work, and found all 4 tires slashed, the rubber gaping open like wounds. There was no note, no evidence, but we all knew who did it. Dylan called the police again, but without proof. There wasn't much they could do. Our security cameras didn't cover the street where I'd parked. We upgraded our security system to cover more areas, and added motion sensor lights that bathed our property in harsh brightness at the slightest movement. Dylan started checking in with me multiple times a day, and I did the same with him. We became hyper-vigilant about Isabella, never letting her play outside alone and changing our routines so they'd be less predictable. Martha was the only family member we still saw regularly. She came over for dinner at least once a week and often watched Isabella after school. I was grateful for her support, but I could tell the situation was wearing on her. She looked older, more tired every time I saw her, new lines etched around her kind eyes. About 2 months after the water park incident, Martha called to invite us to her house for her birthday dinner. "Emma and Thomas will be there," she admitted, her voice hesitant. "But I've made them promise to behave. It's my birthday wish to have all my family together without fighting." Dylan and I debated whether to go, sitting at our kitchen table late into the night. I didn't want to disappoint Martha on her birthday, but I also didn't trust Emma and Thomas as far as I could throw them. "We'll go," Dylan finally decided, his face resolute. "But we'll leave at the first sign of trouble, and Isabella stays with one of us at all times." The dinner was tense from the moment we arrived. Emma and Thomas were already there with their kids, and the fake smiles they plastered on when we walked in made my skin crawl. Martha had made a beautiful spread, the dining table laden with her best dishes, and we all sat down to eat with this horrible forced politeness hanging over everything like a storm cloud. It was during dessert, as Martha served her homemade apple pie, that Thomas decided to break the tension. "So, Siobhan, I hear you've been having car trouble lately. That's too bad." His smile didn't reach his eyes. I stared at him, fork suspended midair. "Yeah, it's almost like someone deliberately slashed my tires." He smirked, taking a deliberate bite of pie. "Well, you know what they say about paranoid people. They usually deserve what's coming to them." Dylan's fork clattered onto his plate. "What the hell is that supposed to mean?" Emma jumped in, her voice honeyed poison. "Oh, calm down, Dylan. He's just making conversation. By the way, Siobhan, it's amazing what kids will say if you tell them the right things, isn't it?" I felt sick, bile rising in my throat. Was that a threat against Isabella? I looked over at her, happily eating cake and oblivious to the tension, chocolate smeared on her cheek. "I think it's time we go," I said, standing up, my chair scraping loudly against the floor. "Martha, thank you for dinner. I'm sorry we can't stay longer." Martha looked devastated but nodded in understanding, her birthday celebration in ruins. As we gathered our things, Emma cornered me in the hallway, her body blocking my path. "You know, this little family you've built won't last," she hissed, her breath hot against my face. "Dylan will eventually see what a mistake he made choosing you." I pushed past her without responding, my shoulder bumping hers. We got Isabella into the car and drove home in silence, streetlights casting intermittent shadows across our faces. Once she was in bed, Dylan and I sat at the kitchen table trying to process what had happened. "They basically admitted to slashing my tires," I said, wrapping my hands around a mug of tea that had long gone cold. "And that comment about what kids will say. Dylan, I think they're planning to turn Isabella against us somehow." Dylan ran his hands through his hair, his frustration palpable. "I know. I just don't know what to do anymore. They're my siblings, but I don't even recognize them." The next morning, we found our house had been egged overnight, yellow slime dripping down our windows and front door. Our security cameras caught 2 figures in hoodies, but their faces weren't visible in the grainy footage. The day after that, strange letters started appearing in our mailbox, threatening vulgar notes with no signature, the words cut from magazines in a disturbing collage. I added them to my growing file of evidence, the folder bulging with proof of harassment. Then came the call from Isabella's school that made my blood run cold. Someone had called pretending to be me, saying Isabella needed to be released early for a doctor's appointment. Thankfully, the school secretary recognized that the voice didn't match mine, and refused. When the caller got angry, they hung up and called me to verify. I was shaking as I picked Isabella up from school that day, my knuckles white on the steering wheel. Someone had tried to take my child. I knew in my gut it was Emma, but I couldn't prove it. The thought of what might have happened if the secretary hadn't been so diligent haunted me. That night, Dylan and I made a decision. We called Martha and asked her to come over. When she arrived, her face lined with worry, we sat her down and laid everything out. The slashed tires, the egging, the threatening notes, and now the attempt to take Isabella from school. "We need you to choose a side, Martha," Dylan said gently, taking his mother's hands in his. "We love you, but we can't keep putting Isabella at risk." Martha looked heartbroken, tears welling in her eyes. "They're my children, Dylan. All of you are. I can't choose." "Then we have to," I said, my voice firm despite the ache in my heart. "We're cutting off all contact with Emma and Thomas. Completely. And if that means we can't see you either because they'll be around, then that's what has to happen." Tears streamed down Martha's face, carving paths through her makeup. "Please don't do this. I'll talk to them again. I'll make them understand." Dylan took her hand. "Mom, you've been trying to make them understand their whole lives. It hasn't worked. We have to protect our daughter." Martha left that night still crying, and I felt terrible. She was the only mother figure I'd ever had, and pushing her away felt like cutting off a limb. But Isabella's safety had to come first. The next few weeks were quiet, too quiet. No more vandalism, no more strange incidents. I should have been relieved, but instead, I felt like we were in the eye of a hurricane, waiting for the next wave to hit. It came in the form of rumors spreading around our community. Parents at Isabella's school suddenly became cold toward me, conversation stopping when I approached at pickup time. I overheard whispers about how I was isolating Dylan from his family, how I was unstable and dangerous. Someone even suggested I had been investigated by child services. Dylan confronted one of the dads at Isabella's soccer practice, who admitted Emma had been telling people I had a history of violence and mental illness, that I was manipulating Dylan and poisoning Isabella against her family. I was furious and heartbroken. These lies could affect Isabella's friendships, our standing in the community, even my job if they spread far enough. I added it all to my documentation file, which was getting thicker by the day. Then one evening, about 3 months after the water park incident, Dylan got a call from Martha. He put it on speaker so I could hear. "Dylan, it's Emma," Martha sobbed, her voice crackling through the phone. "She's in bad shape. She got fired from her job and Nathan's having problems at school. The family is falling apart without you. Please, can't you find it in your heart to forgive her?" I watched Dylan's face, saw the guilt and conflict there. He loved his sister once, before all this madness. Part of him wanted to help her. "Mom," he said gently, "Emma brought this on herself. We didn't want any of this." "But she's your sister," Martha pleaded. "Family forgives." After he hung up, Dylan looked at me with tired eyes. "What do you think?" I took his hand, feeling the warmth of his skin against mine. "I think Emma is manipulating your mom to get to us. Remember what she's done, Dylan? The water park humiliation, the slashed tires, trying to take Isabella from school, spreading lies about me. Would a person who's genuinely sorry do all that?" He nodded slowly. "You're right. I know you're right. It's just hard." "I know," I said, leaning my head on his shoulder. "I wish things were different too." 2 days later, I was home alone with Isabella when someone started pounding on our front door. Through the security camera, I saw Emma standing on our porch, looking disheveled and angry, her hair wild and her makeup smeared. "I know you're in there," she screamed, her voice distorted by the camera's speaker. "Open the door, you Irish bitch! You've ruined everything!" Isabella looked up from her homework, eyes wide with fear. "Mommy, why is Aunt Emma yelling?" I guided her upstairs to her room, my arm protective around her shoulders. "Aunt Emma is having a bad day, sweetie. Stay up here and finish your homework, okay? I'll handle it." I called Dylan, who said he was on his way home, then called the police. Emma was still screaming and pounding on the door when they arrived, her fists making the wood rattle in its frame. I watched through the window as they talked to her, as she gesticulated wildly and pointed at our house. Eventually, they escorted her to a patrol car and drove away, the red and blue lights flashing across our living room walls. When Dylan got home, we went to the police station to file for a restraining order. This time, with Emma's public meltdown and all our documented evidence, they granted it. Thomas was furious and started posting lies about us online, but it backfired when several neighbors who'd witnessed Emma's meltdown defended us. The restraining order seemed to be the wake-up call Emma and Thomas needed. The harassment stopped. No more vandalism, no more strange incidents, no more rumors. We still kept our security measures in place, but for the first time in months, I started to relax. Martha still saw Emma and Thomas, but she respected our boundaries and never brought them to events where we would be present. It was an uneasy peace, but it was peace nonetheless. 6 months after the water park incident, we had Isabella's 7th birthday party at home. Just a small gathering with her school friends and Martha. No drama, no chaos, just a normal, happy celebration. As I watched Isabella blow out her candles, surrounded by friends and genuine love, I realized we'd made it through the storm. That night, after everyone had gone home and Isabella was asleep, Dylan and I sat on the porch swing, his arm around my shoulders. The gentle creaking of the chains matched the rhythm of our breathing. "I'm sorry my family turned out to be such a nightmare," he said, echoing what I'd said months ago. I leaned into him, breathing in his familiar scent. "Not all of them. Martha is amazing. And you're pretty okay too, I guess." He laughed, kissing the top of my head. "We're going to be okay, aren't we?" I nodded, watching the stars appear in the darkening sky, pinpricks of light in the vast darkness. "Yeah, we are." I didn't know then that our troubles with Emma and Thomas weren't completely over, that there would be one final confrontation that would change everything. But in that moment, with Dylan's arm around me and Isabella sleeping safely upstairs, I believed we could handle whatever came next. I was right about our troubles with Emma and Thomas not being completely over. The peace lasted about 3 months after Isabella's birthday party. I started sleeping better, stopped jumping at every noise, and even took down some of our security cameras, though Dylan insisted we keep the main ones up. Life was getting back to normal, or whatever passes for normal after all that drama. Then one afternoon, I got a text from Martha asking if she could stop by. She showed up looking nervous, fidgeting with her purse strap as she sat at our kitchen table. I made her tea, noticing how her hands shook slightly when she took the mug. "Emma and Thomas want to apologize," she blurted out. "For real this time. They've been going to therapy and they realize how terrible they've been." I nearly choked on my own tea. "Martha, we've been down this road before." I know, she said, her eyes pleading. "But they seem different now. Emma's even stopped drinking. They want to meet somewhere public, just to talk." I told her I'd discuss it with Dylan, but I already knew what his answer would be. Sure enough, when he got home from work and I told him, he laughed so hard he had to sit down. "Absolutely not," he said, wiping his eyes. "They can apologize by continuing to stay the hell away from us." Martha kept pushing over the next few weeks. She'd drop little comments when she came over to see Isabella, about forgiveness, about family, about how Emma was really changing. I felt bad for her. She was stuck in the middle, loving all her children, but watching them refuse to be in the same room. Then one Saturday morning, Dylan got a call from Thomas. He almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of him. He put it on speaker so I could hear. "Dylan, it's me," Thomas said, his voice different than I remembered, less smug, more subdued. "I know you probably don't want to talk to me, but I need to say something." Dylan didn't respond, just waited. "I fucked up. We both did. Emma's worse than me, but I went along with everything, and that makes me just as bad." He paused, and I could hear him taking a deep breath. "I'm sorry. For the water park. For the harassment. For all of it. I was a racist a-hole to Siobhan from day one, and there's no excuse for that." Dylan looked at me, eyebrows raised. I shrugged, not sure what to make of this. "Why now?" Dylan finally asked. "My wife left me," Thomas said flatly. "Took Ethan with her. Said she couldn't be married to someone who would terrorize his own family." Hearing it put that way, it was a wake-up call. After Dylan hung up, we debated whether Thomas was being sincere. It sounded genuine, but we'd been fooled before. We decided to keep our distance, but not slam the door completely shut. A week later, I was grocery shopping when I literally ran carts with Emma in the produce section. My heart immediately started racing, and I looked around for the nearest exit. But Emma looked different. Her usual perfect appearance was gone, replaced by messy hair and no makeup. She looked smaller somehow. "Siobhan," she said, her voice quiet. "I know you have a restraining order. I'll leave. I'm sorry." She turned to go, but something made me call after her. "Emma, wait." She stopped, looking back with surprise. "Are you really in therapy?" I asked. She nodded. "Twice a week. Turns out I have some serious issues with jealousy and control." She gave a sad little laugh. Who would have thought, right? I didn't know what to say, so I just nodded and watched her walk away. When I told Dylan about the encounter, he was skeptical, but admitted it was weird to hear Emma acknowledge her problems. We decided to meet Thomas for coffee the following weekend. Just Dylan and me, no Isabella, in a public place. I was nervous the whole morning, changing my outfit 3 times and feeling sick to my stomach. Dylan kept asking if I was sure I wanted to go, and honestly I wasn't. But I was tired of living in fear, tired of the constant tension. Thomas was already at the coffee shop when we arrived. sitting at a corner table with 3 cups in front of him. He stood up awkwardly when he saw us, his usual confidence gone. "I got you both coffee," he said. "I remembered how you take it, Dylan, but I wasn't sure about you, Siobhan, so I got it black." "Black is fine," I said, sitting down cautiously. The chair felt uncomfortably hard beneath me, or maybe that was just my nerves. The conversation was stilted at first. Thomas apologized again, explaining that after his wife left, he started really looking at his behavior. He admitted that he and Emma had always resented Dylan for being their mother's favorite, and when Dylan married me, an Irish woman, it gave them an easy target for their resentment. "It's not an excuse," he said, staring into his coffee. "Just an explanation." I asked the question that had been bothering me for years. "But why the Irish thing? It's so random." Thomas looked genuinely ashamed. Our dad was like that, always making jokes about the Irish, the Scots, anyone he considered beneath him. We grew up hearing it, thought it was normal. He shook his head. I don't want Ethan growing up thinking that kind of hate is okay. By the end of the coffee, I wasn't ready to forgive Thomas, but I believed he was genuinely trying to change. Dylan seemed to feel the same way. We agreed to a trial period, occasional supervised visits with Isabella, always in public places, always with both Dylan and me present. Emma was a different story. Thomas told us she was still struggling, still angry at times, but working on it. We weren't ready to see her yet, and Thomas understood. The first meeting with Thomas and Isabella was at a park. Isabella was wary at first, hiding behind my legs, but Thomas had brought a kite and soon they were running around trying to get it airborne. It was strange seeing him act like a normal, decent uncle. Martha was overjoyed that we were giving Thomas a chance. She came to many of our meetings, her face glowing as she watched her son and granddaughter play. I could tell she was hoping we'd eventually include Emma too, but she didn't push it. 3 more months passed with these careful, limited interactions. Thomas continued to show he was changing. He stopped making racist jokes, started asking thoughtful questions about Irish culture, and always respected our boundaries with Isabella. Then one day Martha called in a panic. Emma had been in a car accident and was in the hospital. She wasn't critically injured, but she was asking for Dylan. "You don't have to go," I told him, but I knew he would. Despite everything, she was still his sister. Dylan went alone the first time. He came back looking thoughtful, telling me Emma had been different, humbled, quieter, genuinely remorseful. I wasn't convinced, but I agreed to go with him the next day, leaving Isabella with Martha. Walking into Emma's hospital room was surreal. She looked small in the bed, her face bruised from the airbag. When she saw me, tears immediately filled her eyes. "I didn't think you'd come," she said. "I almost didn't," I replied honestly. Emma didn't make excuses. She didn't try to minimize what she'd done. She just apologized, over and over, her voice breaking. "The accident had been a wake-up call," she said. "She'd been drinking again, driving when she shouldn't have been. She could have unalived someone. I've been so angry for so long," she said, wiping her eyes. "At Dylan for being mom's favorite. At you for being the kind of person I know I should be but aren't. At myself for being such a horrible person." I didn't know if I believed her, but the Emma I knew would never have admitted to being anything less than perfect. This vulnerability seemed real. We started including Emma in our meetings with Thomas, always in public, always carefully monitored. She was awkward with Isabella at first, clearly unsure how to act around a child she tried to hurt, but Isabella, with her incredible capacity for forgiveness, eventually warmed up to her. It wasn't all smooth sailing. There were times when Emma would say something that set off alarm bells, or when Thomas would make a joke that crossed a line. Each time, Dylan and I would pull back, reduce contact, make it clear that their access to our family was conditional on their behavior. About a year after the water park incident, we invited Thomas and Emma to our house for dinner. It was the first time they'd been in our home since everything happened. Martha came too, her face a picture of happiness as she watched her children sitting at the same table without fighting. After dinner, while Dylan and Thomas were washing dishes and Martha was playing with Isabella in the living room, Emma asked if she could talk to me privately. We stepped out onto the back porch, the cool evening air raising goosebumps on my arms. "I need to tell you something," she said, her voice serious. "I was the one who slashed your tires and egged your house, and I did try to pick Isabella up from school that day." I stared at her, my body tensing. I know you know," she said, "but I need to say it out loud. I did those things, and they were horrible, and I'm sorry." She reached into her purse and pulled out an envelope. "This is a check for the cost of the tires and cleaning the house. And this," she pulled out another envelope, "is a letter for Isabella, for when she's older, explaining that none of what happened was her fault, and that her Aunt Emma was a messed up person who's trying to be better." I took the envelopes, not sure what to say. "You don't have to forgive me," Emma said. "I wouldn't, in your position. But I want you to know I'm going to spend the rest of my life trying to make up for what I did." I didn't forgive her that night, or the next day, or even the next month. But slowly, over time, as Emma continued to show she was changing, the anger I carried started to fade. Not completely. I still had moments where I'd remember the humiliation at the water park, or the fear when I realized someone had tried to take Isabella from school, and I'd feel that rage bubbling up again. But those moments became less frequent. We established a new normal. Family gatherings where everyone behaved like adults. Holidays where Isabella got to enjoy having aunts and uncles and cousins who treated her well. 2 years after the water park incident, at Isabella's 8th birthday party, held at our house, no water activities. I watched as Emma helped Isabella open a present. They were laughing together. No tension. Thomas was teaching Nathan and Ethan to throw a football in the backyard, with Dylan giving pointers. Martha sat beside me on the porch swing, a contented smile on her face. "Thank you," she said quietly. "For what?" "For not giving up on them. I know how hard it was." I shrugged, watching Isabella show Emma her new art set. "They're the ones who did the work." "Yes, but you gave them the chance to show they could change. Not everyone would have." I thought about that later that night, after everyone had gone home and Isabella was asleep, surrounded by her new presents. Dylan found me sitting on the edge of our bed, staring at the family photo we'd taken that day. "Penny, for your thoughts?" he asked, sitting beside me. "I was just thinking about family," I said. "How I grew up without one. And now I have this big, messy, complicated one." Dylan put his arm around me. "Too messy?" I leaned into him, thinking about the long road we'd traveled, the hurt, the fear, the slow rebuilding of trust. It wasn't perfect. Emma still had her moments of jealousy. Thomas still occasionally made jokes that crossed a line, but they were trying, really trying, and that counted for something. "No," I said finally, "just the right amount of messy."